Hello, everyone. Let me know if you have audio in live chat. I see Bulbul. I see Music Guy. I see Susie. I see Qasem. Let me know if the audio is good so we could get started. I need to pause this video on my phone as soon as it gets started over here. I think we're fine. We already have a question. This is pretty good. I don't have to wait for you guys. There. Pause on my phone. All right. Wow. Okay, Music Guy is saying audio is good. All right. Starting off heavy with a great question. Bulbul starts the live stream today. Okay, so Bulbul asks, what are your thoughts on the EU allowing workplaces to discriminate against hijabi women? Okay. Is it actual discrimination though? So here's the thing. My standard for judging this, okay, and you guys could let me know in the live chat if you agree or not, is consistency, okay? So allowing hijab in the workplace or not, by itself, without context, I don't think it could be judged without looking at whether or not if this is a part of a broader law that applies to everyone else, or if it's specifically targeting Muslim women, right? And even if it's okay, so I'm not saying that if it's part of a broader law, there's no issue with it. However, there might be the nature of the problem would be different than what people are suggesting, right? So as an activist that focuses on religion and secularism, my main concern is to fight against both religious discrimination and religious privilege at the same, so I want people to be treated equally regardless of their religion, and not to be targeted because of their religion, but also not to have privileges because of their religion, right? So if a law or executing a law is targeting a group of people who are specifically because of their identity or their personal beliefs, then that's discrimination, and I would be against that. However, if there's a law that exists and not applying that law to a certain group of people because of their religion, that is not this. That would be the opposite of discrimination, which is also wrong because is inequality. That's giving religious people a privilege, inequality before the law because of their religion. Both of these are wrong, right? So based on that, the way I judge this, right, is that if either openly or secretly women are not being allowed to wear the hijab in workplaces because they're targeting Muslims, in that situation, I would be against this. Okay? So it could either be like publicly saying that, yeah, we're doing this because we don't want hijab in the workplace, like just hijab, like, yeah, just hijab. Or they're acting like this is about everybody, but the actual intention is to target specific religious groups, then I would be against it, right? If it was revealed that this was an excuse for different motivations. However, if the reasoning behind it is that, look, we have these laws for everybody, right? In workplaces, we have these rules that private, like, for example, let's say, for example, this is just an hypothetical. In our country, private workplaces, the people in charge get to decide that you're not allowed to have symbols that promote your ideology, political or religious. Okay? We don't want that in our workplace for anybody. And if you come out and say this is discrimination against Muslims, you're like, no, that was a law that was applied to everybody. You just have to be one of those groups. This is not targeted at you. This is for everyone. If we don't apply this to you, That's inequality. You're getting religious privilege. Okay, so that could still, okay, so in that, if that's the intention behind it, this would be not as problematic as people making it sound to be. Like, oh, this is anti-religious discrimination. No, this is the opposite of discrimination. This is equality. This is removing religious privilege. Okay, unless you could show that the intentions behind it was religious discrimination, which I doubt so. Okay, however, there's one more point. If you could still think like, okay, this whole situation where people don't get to express their religious or political symbols in workplaces. Again, I don't know about the details specifically about the situation, whether it's both political or religious. I'm just talking hypothetical, right? You can say like, well, that doesn't make sense anyways. Like, we shouldn't have that rule for not for Muslims, not for anybody, right? Okay, but there's now your problem with this law is something other than discriminating religious, like hijabi women, right? So if that's your issue with this law, then this law was unjust or unfair before it targeted hijabi women, right? So how come this hijabi woman situation is making you object to this law? If this whole notion of we should allow people to advertise or use religious or political symbols in the workplace was always wrong, then it was wrong before it targeted hijabi women. It's not wrong now. Why is it that hijabi women being targeted all of a sudden makes this an issue, right? Again, this is religious privilege. And if you are consistent, if you're like, well, I had the problem with this even without targeting hijabi women, okay, then you're a consistent person. However, this is a much less of an allegation against, like, much of less of a less intense, less problematic form of allegation against these laws than accusing it of being discriminatory against a group of people. You could just be like, well, as a principle, I think people should be able to market or promote their politics and religion in their workplace if they want to. I think that shouldn't. I think private companies shouldn't be able to decide that in their own work environment. By the way, this is not a libertarian position. I want you to understand, this is an anti-libertarian position, right? People think like this is promoting freedom. No, this is the government telling private companies, right, or other companies, right, that in their workplace they don't get to choose, they don't get to decide how their employees behave, right? So, I mean, where do we draw the line? Can people show up with, I don't know, some triple K costumes? I'm not going to say the actual thing because I don't know what YouTube is going to treat that like. Is that okay? Like, is it work? Like, I'm not saying they're equivalent, but we know that private companies should be able to decide certain type of outfit at the workplace. So this is like you saying, when you're promoting freedom, you're promoting freedom from government. You're not promoting freedom from you. If the government steps in and tells private companies that you don't get to tell your your employees to behave like this is actually government restricting private companies. That's like an anti-freedom. This is an anti-libertarian position. Anyways, does that make sense, guys? What do you guys think? Is anybody understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Okay. I don't. Nobody's acknowledging my amazing response to this question. I think that was the best take. This was the best take anywhere ever, and you guys are not acknowledging it. Susie is saying you made sense to me. You guys should be like, wow, guys, you guys should be in the live chat like, this is why I come here. Like, I've never seen anybody explain it like that. This is why I come to Secular Jihadists. Why are you guys not saying that? It's just like, anyways. Susanna saying the water shortage protest that okay, so let's start from the beginning. The water shortage protests, the electricity outages, and the oil worker strikes make it seem like fundamental infrastructure is crumbling in Iran. How long can this regime stay in power when basic needs are not being met? I mean, I think it takes a lot more than basic needs not being met for a regime to be toppled. Okay, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I'm just saying it has to be more than basic needs not being met. There needs to be a political will and a capacity for people to pay a heavy price, and because you could see there are many examples of people's basic needs not being met, way below what it is right now in Iran, and regime surviving, right? I mean, look at Taliban, look at Assad, right? Look at North Korea, right? Look at the Houthis in Yemen, right? The Islamic Republic of Iran is some of these examples, Islamic Republic of Iran is far more in control and have capacity of more capable of crushing dissent than some of these examples. Again, I'm not saying that the toppling of the regime is impossible, but it goes beyond just people's basic needs not being met, right? I do have to mention, though, that the 1979 revolution that happened in Iran was partly because of people who work in the oil industry striking, and I think like there are a lot of people that part of the equation for the 1979 protest is not highlighted as much as it should. Like that had a crippling effect, beyond just like the street protest that gets highlighted more, right? So if the parallels to that right now is noticeable. However, the Pahlavi dynasty was more, the Shah was more accepting of stepping down, given the backlash. Like he could have basically just stayed and fought. I don't know what would have happened. This, like, we have to be careful about comparing the last revolution in Iran with what was happening right now, because this current regime will fight tooth and nail to stay in power. There is no place for them to go after this. These will just because the Shah stepped down at some point. He had in him the willingness to step down, a willingness that is not that will not be seen among the current people in power. So again, I try to draw parallels as to see what works and what doesn't, but we have to also acknowledge the differences. I don't know if that answered your question. Music Guy is asking, Music Guy, thank you for being a member. If Odin or Zeus magically appeared whilst you're pumping iron and offered to make you an immortal god, no strings attached, would you take the offer? Yes. Wait, what's the definition of an immortal god? Yeah, of course, why not? Immortality is like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I take that? I don't understand. Yes, definitely. That's an easy answer. I don't need to explain. It's so obvious. Oh my god, thank you, Music Guy. God damn it. Don't forget. Music Guy, thank you so much. I'm supposed to answer the Patreon question first. Wow. I almost forgot. James is our Patreon question today. Sorry, James. I was supposed to answer Patreon questions. So yes, music guy. I always forget this. So what we do is our patrons get to ask their questions on Patreon before we go live. So in case they're not available to be live here on air with us, so that's I get answered them. So basically, if you miss these live streams and you don't get to ask your questions live, one way to make sure you get your question, I hope you get to make sure that you get your questions answered, is to become a Patreon, and I will answer your question even if you're not live here with us. Okay, so James is asking, as a patron, you guys ever played D&D, and what would you think of D&D campaign that directly includes the stories and characters of the current major religion, Islam and Christianity in particular? I have not played D&D, but I would play D&D if that was the case. Okay, Dungeons and Dragons, for people who don't know. Yes, I would love that. I want a Dungeons and Dragons campaign based on every mythology. I would be like, I want one Islamic, one Christian, one Jewish, one Olympian, one North mythology, one Egyptian mythology. Oof, that would be so awesome. Yes, I would want to imagine if you were learning the history of mythology of every religion through games. That would be fantastic. Yes, somebody make that happen. I would definitely love that. Yes. Thank you, music guy, for reminding me of answering Patreon questions. Okay. Kurisu is saying Wells Fargo closed all personal lines of credit last month. Do you think we're in for another crash like 2008 or worse? I haven't heard about Wells Fargo doing that. But when it comes to crashes, I just know that crashes are a normal part of economic cycles. Like, we are due for many other crashes. You're supposed, okay, so the average market crash, my understanding is that it's supposed to happen, like the average, it's not supposed to happen. The average market crash is once every 7 years. So when you see a market crash, people think like there's something in the economy that is broken. No, that's supposed to happen. It would be weird. It would be alarming if you don't have crashes. You want more crashes so that they don't pile up and become big, right? So they're saying that. I mean, that's my understanding, which could be wrong. Do you think we're in for another crash like 2008? Obviously, I'm not the right person to ask, but I could tell you that most people who are also experts do not don't also know. This is timing, and predicting the timing and the severity of a crash is impossible. Okay, it's so the number of factors are so large that anybody that is predicting you with giving you a timing or predicting the severity of it with certainty, stay away from those people, because there's no certainty in this. The only thing you know is that crashes are supposed to happen. They're supposed to happen. Like, it's how the economy works. They come, and then there's a recovery that is after that, right? But anybody that is telling you with certainty when the next crash is and how big it is, if they're giving you certainty, don't trust those people. And also be mindful of people who seem to have a good track record of predicting things. Like, there are certain people that are marketed as like, look, this person predicted this crash and this crash and this crash and this crash. What they don't show you is that those predictions were correct among many wrong predictions that they have. It's easy for you to get a lot of good, accurate predictions when you're just making a lot of predictions. And then the ones that come true, those are the ones that get highlighted by media as a way to say, like, look, this person who predicted this crash is now predicting this crash. Therefore, buy this or sell that. Like, well, yeah, they predicted this and this accurately, but they also predicted this and this and this and this wrong. Okay. There is no model that could predict these things accurately. We got a super chat. Wow, Secular Rarity, thank you so much. Hold on, where is it? Secular Rarity saying, Apostate Prophet has yet to respond to your cage match after. So let me try this again. Apostate Prophet has yet to respond to your cage match offer. Do you think it is because he is scared or because he knows he will be destroyed? Both. Both. Obviously, Apostate Prophet would not dare accept my challenge. However, this is not an insult because can you blame him? I mean, look at me. Okay? Like, this is smart. Guys, cowardice is not always a bad thing. It's a smart decision to cower away. Okay? Yes, Apostate Prophet is definitely scared of me. He is not going to accept this challenge. He's going to run away like a little bunny and find a place to hide. Okay? And he's shivering right now in fear, and he regrets ever acknowledging my existence because now it's going to be brought to attention of how big of a coward it is. But I'm here to defend him by saying that it makes sense for him to be afraid. It makes sense, okay? Because obviously it's me and it's him, right? So the fact that he's afraid, the fact that he's acting like the offer is not there is completely justifiable based on the wide gap between us when it comes to strength and agility and all that. Nick is saying, how serious are the threats? Oh, thank you for the super chat, Nick. How serious are the threats against Masih al-Najad, and are you safe? Guys, please don't bring up countries and stuff like that, okay? All right. So, I'm not going to talk about my personal stuff. It's not a good idea to bring attention to that. However, the threats against Masih al-Najad are extremely serious. The Islamic Republic of Iran has a history of kidnapping people and executing people and assassinating people beyond its borders. And doing that to journalists. The Islamic Republic of Iran kidnapped a French resident, Ruhollah Zam, which was a journalist as well, lured him into Iraq and then kidnapped him. Took him to Iran, kidnapped him in Iran, took him to Iran, made a TV series out of kidnapping him and taking him to Iran, and made a pariah out of him on national TV, interviewed him, and then executed him, which that would be the fate that would have been waiting Masih al-Najad, I assume, if she was kidnapped as well. So this is we have a history of this. This is not a joke. This is not guesswork. This is the way as the Islamic Republic of Iran operates. However, I am hopeful that it's not a threat. It was a threat. I'm hopeful that it's not a threat anymore. I'm hoping that the level of security of Masih al-Najad has increased significantly after this, and I'm hoping that the eyes on her is dramatically more now, and I'm hoping that the police and FBI in the United States, because of the first threat, is going to make it impossible for her to be kidnapped ever again. So I'm hoping that the threat has been eliminated, right? I'm hoping that. So is the threat serious? The threat was serious. However, I hope the threat is not serious anymore, given FBI's reactions to something like this, okay? All right, where was I? Because I did the super chats. Now I have to go back up. All right, I might have missed a few questions, so Stony is saying, how do you think USA and Canada should solve the homeless problem on these large West Coast cities like LA, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, etc.? I mean, guys, if this was something I would have an answer for, the economists would have, and the city planners would have had. If this was a situation where it could have been fixed with a suggestion that I make on a live stream, then it would have been fixed by now. So, you know what I mean? Like, if there is a solution that could be offered, just like there are no, the people that are working, you know, in Vancouver or LA, they're not like evil people that just want to have homeless people, have more homeless people, right? So it can't be, I'm just assuming that the solution to these can't be something that is just like, here it is, and now we don't have any homeless people, right? And sometimes the solution that would fix something would require some level of authoritarianism that would have bigger problems, that would cause more problems that it could solve. Like, a lot of people sit here and be like, well, why didn't they just do this and this and this? Well, because they don't have the budget for it, or they don't have the government doesn't have an authority to force people to do this and this and that, right? And like, okay, well, if they don't have the budget for it, well, then we could raise taxes. Yeah, but if you raise taxes, then it's going to show up its ugly head somewhere else, and it's going to cause problems over here. Like, you can't just fix everything by just like, hey, just like tax everyone more. Like, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying, like, it's not like as easy as like, oh, just do this and that, right? So lack of resources and lack of government power to force, in different institutions to do certain things makes this not a solution for us people, just behind the scene, just be like, oh, well, here's a solution, just do that. Well, with what money? With what power, right? And you're like, oh, well, just give them that power. Or like, okay, have you thought about the consequences of giving them that power? Let's give them a bigger budget. Okay, give them the bigger budget and cut from where? And have you considered the consequences of cutting the budget from over there, right? Because maybe that's going to be analyzing coming up with the cost benefit analysis is not as easy as you think. Like, things are connected with each other in economy in ways that once you get into it is so complicated, right? Like, there are people that are spending their entire lives studying these relations, and those are the people that would have much better understanding of coming up with solutions to this than somebody like me, right? If Muhammad was a playable character in Mortal Kombat, what would be his fatality move? Cutting the moon in half, and the half of the moon will come down and crush you. Wait, that's a great question, Nick. I must have missed it. Where is? Oh, yeah. Oh, I think. Oh no, that was the fatality one. Yes. Now we're getting some good questions here. Stoney saying Armin couldn't even handle Dave Rubin in an intellectual cage match of ideas. My dog can handle Dave Rubin in an intellectual cage match of ideas. Yes. Ooh, I like that. You guys are funny. Okay, guy. These are funny, but let's get more questions. All right. What do you think of the future of woke social justice warrior movements and the political divide in US? Well, the political divide in the US has been shown, in studies that has become much, the gap has become bigger and bigger, right? So that's the thing that everybody can and not just feel like it's happening. We have data that shows that, right? And that's that's a big issue. I don't know where it's going to head. So some people think like when you see a trend, that means that trend is going to continue, right? But a lot of times you have the law of return to the mean, right? So if it is just because something is moving in one direction, that like people are like, oh my god, we were here, the divide was here, and now the divide is here. So based on this trend, 50 years from now, the divide is going to be like here, right? But maybe not. Maybe because there's in mathematics, when the if you look at probability, if something gets to an extreme level, the likelihood is that it's gonna the next trend is for us to come back to a more normal, to a more average, whatever the trend was over the past, I don't know, 50 years, whatever the average of that is, maybe the likelihood is that it's going to now, because this is an extreme version of that, maybe the likelihood is that it's going to go back to an average level, which was a lot more normal, right? So, but again, this is like predicting things based on, when people come up with predictions like that, they ignore the fact that the number of factors that could move these trends are so high and so complicated and so unpredictable that coming up with a prediction is almost useless, right? Because here's the thing, like this political divide, right? How much of it, again, not all of it, but how much of it was influenced by Trump? Okay. And think about the Trump effect on this divide, and then think about who could have predicted, like, let's say 5 years before Trump was elected as president, 5 years before that, who could have predicted something like that happening, right? So given that something so unpredictable had such a major effect on political thought in the United States, I know that's not the only thing. There are many other factors, but that's one factor that has a huge influence. Given how unpredictable that is, then the only thing that you could be sure of is more unpredictable things that happens in the future. Okay, that's the only thing. So just think about another Trump-like effect, or another pandemic-like effect, or another 9/11 effect. These are things that nobody saw coming, and it shifted the direction of politics, foreign policy, internal policy, people's view on politics, people's views on each other. It shifted it in ways that nobody saw coming. So these things will happen again. So if you're like, oh, I see things moving in this way, well, what if you see another Trump? What if you see a left-leaning Trump? What if you see another, I don't know, global pandemic or something like that happening? What if you see like another attack that nobody saw coming? Like these are, you could be, the only thing you could be almost sure of is these things that just moves everyone's prediction into another direction, right? These things are gonna, like, you look at your model that you have for your prediction, and just know that this model is going to be thrown into a different direction from these one in lifetime events that's going to come at it. These rare events, it's going to happen every, I don't know, at least every 5 years. So what good is your, unless you come up with like bigger long-term, like multi decade predictions based on the way that science and technology is going, those you could like, is easier to make. But making prediction of the direction of people's political thought in the next decade, it's next to impossible. So anybody that is giving you any prediction with certainty, again, you should be wary of those people. You should be like, okay, this person is either ignorant or is not being honest with me. Okay, you should not be able to predict these things with this level of certainty. This is not a person that I should be able to take seriously. And don't let them take their previous correct predictions as proof that their current predictions are going to be true. That's not how predictions work. Okay. Armin, what are some social norms you would like to see changed in society? Circumcision. I would like circumcision to become illegal, both male and female, illegal everywhere on the planet. I think it's one of the worst humanitarian crises that people don't take seriously. As we speak right now, babies are being tortured. They're experiencing an extreme amount of pain, unnecessary pain that they don't need to be. These people, little helpless infants are being tortured right now. And it's just part of the norm. Nobody's doing anything about it. If you did the same thing to an adult, it would have been on the news. It would have been covered as something extremely. If you went and kidnapped an adult and in a van and just pin them down and take a sharp object and torture their genitals with it, people would be horrified. But you could do the same thing to an infant and make them experience an extreme amount of pain. And apparently people are okay with that, doing that to a large number of infants. Just like people are just being tortured, like little people are being tortured right now, and nobody seems to care about that. Have you been ever contacted by government agencies regarding your movement? Yes. I'm not going to go into more detail. What's the safest Middle Eastern country for ex-Muslims? Israel. Yeah, actually, let me tell you, I've been to Israel, and the security there is crazy. Yeah, so yeah, that's obviously the safest place for ex-Muslims. Safest place actually, it's not just the safest place for ex-Muslims. Israel is, I'm assuming, it's also the safest place for Muslims. Yeah. I think so. I'm happy to be corrected on this, so I'm not sure. Yes. Okay. Kurisu saying, mate, have you been following the recent floods in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands? It's terrible. Yes, yes, of course, I've seen it. It's insane. The videos coming out of there is insane. I mean, I don't have that much commentary on it, other than I hope this results into more funding against climate change, and because I think actually, I don't know if I should say this. More rich countries. No, I don't know if I should say it like this. Okay, it's devastating, and it's a tragedy. But I hope it results. Rich countries experiencing the effects of climate change, I hope it results into more serious actions. Because if these were African countries, or if these were Indonesian, people, or if they would be like, oh yeah, it's tragic. So I hope that the effects of climate change being felt in Europe is going to make rich countries fund the fight against climate change more. Okay, I hope people don't think that I'm trying to say yeah, it's good that rich people, rich countries, are suffering. I hope it's not coming across as that. If it's coming across like that, then I'm not doing a good job at explaining to you what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just hoping that rich countries spend more money so that less people have to suffer like this. Was that in bad taste? I hope people understand what I'm trying to say. Again, if this is coming across as me saying oh yeah, it's a good thing that this is happening to rich countries instead of poor countries, if it's coming across like that, it's only because I'm not communicating it well. Okay, so that's not what I'm saying. Okay, I'm just hoping that the result is that, yeah, I already explained this. If somebody wants to misunderstand what I'm saying, I think I've done enough to try to avoid that. Secular Rarity saying yes, and Susanna helped change my mind on how FBI handled it. I went, oh yeah, so this is a comment, not a question. What? I don't understand this. Okay. Why do you think the Democrats promote more able and worthy leaders like Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard in place of Kamala and AOC? Okay, Tulsi Gabbard is like a conspiracy theorist nutter, so I don't know what you're talking about. And Andrew Yang doesn't know how to promote himself. Okay, so I mean, at some point, the responsibility is also on the people who are like Andrew Yang sucks at campaigning, right? So maybe like I mean, I like the guy. I like a lot of his suggestions. I'm in favor of uh, universal income, right? I'm in favor of that. Universal basic income, but his campaigning sucks, right? So I mean, AOC, I don't know, love her or hate her, she knows how to. She knows how to like fire up a crowd. So at some point, the responsibility is also on these people themselves, right? I mean, Kamala's popularity is like dropping like a rock. So I don't know what you're talking about. Kamala Harris, like I don't know who, like she's in negatives now. Have you seen how popular she is? So it's not like she's like being celebrated by Democrats. Oh, you already asked this one. Did you see the reports that the internet was cut in Khuzestan? Yes, I saw. Um, and I saw some people saying like what's happening behind that connection. A connection cut is devastating. So I don't know what's happening once the internet is back. We'll see what kind of reports comes out of it. Qasim is here. I wonder if Qasim has heard anything new. But when the internet gets cut, we're like, oh crap, what are they about to do? Like, because what happened in last time to cut the internet, it was like brutal. So we're actually going to be here to make sure we shine a light on it if we get reports that, that this was an excuse for like some mass. Yeah, we're going to cover this. But yeah, I heard about that, Suze. Music guy saying with the Israeli airstrike on Hezbollah, Iranian weapons depot in Syria, do you think Iran will respond to this attack? Well, Iran is incapable of responding to these attacks. I saw some I watched some pro-regime YouTube channels now so desperate in showing that Iran is retaliating. Okay, so Iran, when they retaliate, it's going to be not as devastating as what Israel is doing to Iranian proxy groups in Syria. It's going to be something small, and then they're going to go home and act like it was so big. But Iran is not right now in a position, unless they're like politically, it would be devastating if they do something big. They don't have the resources or the political capital, given the Vienna talks, to do anything major. Unless they act very stupidly, we'll see. Because Biden has shown that he doesn't have any tolerance for not just attacks by Iran against U.S. Soldiers, but even against U.S. interests. Biden is becoming. A lot of people thought that Biden is going to go easy on Iran, given the Vienna talks. But at least when it comes to acting in Syria, Biden has been more aggressive against Iranian interests than Trump was. Where they draw the line when it comes to retaliation. So Iran has gotten the memo, like, okay, you could expect something devastating if you do something, like your interest will be targeted, right? However, I've seen how desperate they are. Like, I've watched pro-regime YouTube channels, and they have gone so far now that any Israeli that just like has a cold, if it sneezes, they're like, that was us. Like, just people just dying. They take like random people just dying in Israel, like if they're military or if they're high up, people like, oh, we have spies in Israel, and that's how this has happened. Like, okay. Yeah, they're desperate. They're pathetic. I mean, okay. So actually, let me correct that. It doesn't. They're pathetic in some aspects, but they are also winning in some other aspects. Okay. So when it comes to direct military versus military attack, okay, um, Iran has nothing. Iran's government has nothing against Israel or United States. Like they would be wiped out. Like you have, oh, yeah, I see you have some, I don't know, this base over here. It would be a shame if somebody took it out. And Israel and United States, if they find them, if they would be able to just take them out, and Iran would be like, okay, there goes our base. I guess we have to have a base there where we don't, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so when it comes to that kind of operations, like they're pathetically, small and insignificant. Okay. However, when it comes to asymmetrical warfare and funding rebels and ideological influence in an area, and then they're to be fair, they're winning on that, right? So if you think about it, like everywhere Iran went and had an influence on the people who were rebelling against US interests, Iran's interests won over their enemies, right? When it comes to Syria, Iran's support of Assad was very influential against the United States wanted to remove Assad. If Iran didn't support Assad, Assad wouldn't be in power now, probably. Okay? So they won over there. When it comes to Lebanon, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy. Now, with the situation in Lebanon, Hezbollah is going to become more and more. It has always been very influential in Lebanese politics, and now it's going to be probably even more influential, right? When it comes to Israel's enemies, like look at all the Arab countries that attacked Israel. Every single one of them was defeated, except what? Which one? Except Hezbollah, which was supported and trained and funded by the Islamic Republic of Iran. So Hezbollah's battles against Israel was a lot more successful than anyone else's battles against Israel, right? So over there, Iran's government has become successful. When it comes to Houthis versus Saudi Arabia, the support of Islamic Republic Iran for Houthis was instrumental and managed to make the Houthis what was supposed to be a 3-month war where they get crushed by Saudi Arabia turn into now what year? I don't even know. Are we on year 6? What year are we right now in this battle? And not only they were not crushed, they have become the de facto government. Even though they're not recognized by the United Nations, technically they are the de facto government. And not only they're not crushed, they're actually now attacking targets on Saudi soil, right? So they're like, not only we're not defending, we're actually now we're now attacking, right? So, and if you look at it in that way, when it comes to asymmetrical warfare, so if you could like army to army, when it comes to Israel versus Iran or United States versus Iran, there's no hope for the Iranian side. When it comes to like, oh, we're just going to build some religious centers here and we're going to change the demographics of the people in Iraq and Syria, and we're going to make the Shias over here become more loyal to the Velayat Faqih and fund these rebels against those rebels and give some training to these people and give some ammunition to those people. When it comes to that kind of strategic fight against like Israel or United States, then yes, and by those standards, Iran's government has been a lot more successful. No, I have not heard of this, so I don't know what to comment. Cargo cults. Yes, I have. What the hell? What am I saying? Have you heard of the cargo cults? Yes. Yes, I have. They're fascinating. I watched documentaries on them a long time ago, but I don't remember the details enough to be able to comment on it. But they were so fascinating to watch. Go check them out. I don't know much what else to say right now because it was many years ago. I don't know. If Armin went against Dave Rubin, his brain would be in recovery mode from too many high level ideas. Well, Nick, I have good news for you. I did go against Dave Rubin and I challenged him, and he didn't have an answer for any of my challenges. Go watch the if you want to see me challenging Dave Rubin, like nobody has ever had, like there is like nobody has challenged Dave Rubin like I have. Like that debate of me with him should be more famous than it is. Okay, just go search Secular Jihadists Dave Rubin. Okay, so you have to go to the very end to see the glorious part. Okay, because what you're gonna see is four people. Okay, so Faisal, Yasser Muhammad, and Ali, and then me comes at the end. Okay, so you can see Faisal just sucking him off, and then same thing with everyone else, just like celebrating him, because I recognize at that point of what big of a joke this person is, but everybody else was taking him way too seriously. So you just wait. I was just waiting for my turn the entire discussion. Like you could watch everybody just be like celebrating him, and then it went to Yas Muhammad and then Ali, and then it was my turn. Okay, and that's when the floodgates opened, and I started challenging him point on point on point on point, and he had nothing. He was like, "What the hell? I thought this was supposed to be somebody." Like you could see he was not happy. He never responded to us again. Faisal was upset because he valued his relationship with Dave Rubin, and he was like, "I ruined it for him." He was not. Dave Rubin was stayed away from us ever since. He didn't respond to any of their messages. Like they were very cozy with him, but after that, he was ignoring us. So they just wanted to bring him here to suck him off. And I was like, I have a list of questions that I need to ask. And you could guys, go watch that. Go to my section and see how I look how challenge. I challenge you to go find anybody else that challenged Dave Rubin the way I challenged them, and just look how he had nothing. He had nothing to say, right? And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm okay with people challenging me, blah 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 blah." And then after that, he was like, "Bye bye, I'm never gonna talk to any of you ever again." And he completely cut. He doesn't like to being challenged. Anyways, mine was a question. What was your question, Ghostbunny? Sorry, I don't. I really want to answer Ghostbunny's questions. Oh my god, this is like, have I not been telling you guys about predictions? What do you think is the future of Chinese, Iranian, and North Korean governments? Have I what? Just go back and listen to what I said to you about predictions earlier, okay? Okay, guys, I'm not going to talk about my personal security or my anything like that, okay? I'm not going to highlight that. Okay, here's a better question. What do you think is more dangerous, a left biased mainstream media or a right biased mainstream media? A right biased mainstream media. How depends on the country, depends on how biased, depends on the nature of the politics. Okay, so like for example, if you're living under Stalin, then I'm assuming a left leaning biased mainstream media is more dangerous. But if you're living under, I don't know, Sharia law and like in Islamic Republic of Iran, then a right leaning mainstream, I don't think you could just compare them like left leaning versus right leaning, which one is more dangerous. It really depends on the context, depends on how dangerous the government that they're working under is. It depends on who's causing more harm. Like I don't think it's worth our time to measure like we already spend enough time measuring levels of harm by already existing events, and that's already difficult, right? So for example, you can see like right now, where is the harm coming from mostly from left-leaning people in the United States or right-leaning people in the United States, right? That's already a very difficult comparison. Now if you want to just come up with hypothetical situations, that's even more difficult, right? So I think like, I don't know, like I could tell you that I don't know about media, but I think like right-leaning governments, no, I don't know actually. It really depends on the context. It depends what time of in history you are. Depends on, you could have, there are many examples that you could have a left-leaning biased mainstream media that is committing more crazy ideas than the right-leaning one, or you could have the other way. Like that's so binary. I need more context. I need more details. It's not that simple to just if you find bias, just address the bias and be like, this is ridiculous, this is wrong. Just be like, it doesn't, yeah, that type of calculation is hard. If you have suggestions for guests for Secular Jihadists, please reach out to Ali Rizvi on Twitter. He's in charge of our guests. Okay, music guy. Do you think there are any relation between lockdowns and rioting? Recent example, South African civil unrest. People have more free time, not working, staying home. Seems similar to America's riot. I would be surprised if there's no relation. You have something that is affecting world's economy and people's behavior and people's frustrations in so many different ways that to suggest that it doesn't have some effect on it would be ridiculous. Honestly, everything has an effect on everything, and something that is so major, something that has impacted the world in such dramatic way, for it not to have an impact on civil unrest would be unimaginable. Okay. However, the nature of the effect it has on civil unrest is different from place to place, right? In some places, it might be the main cause behind the civil unrest. People are just, it might be like or at least the initial motivation behind the civil unrest. Like, for example, it jump started, like in Cuba, for example. In other places, it could be is that the civil unrest was due, that as some people are theorizing, and the lockdowns just delayed the civil unrest, and now we're seeing it happen, right? So again, obviously it has an effect, but the nature of the effect is different. In some places, the civil unrest is about something else, but I don't know, people being off work might have pushed them to be able to do that. Or sometimes people have a general problem with the economy, but now it's just like it has gone to, because of the lockdown has gone to a place where it's unbearable. I mean, can anybody explain how it could not have an effect? Like, it's obviously related. Okay. However, please be careful when something is related and something has an effect on something else. Don't make it don't look at it as a single cause issue. Okay. Most social and societal events, I mean, not most, all of them are not single cause. Okay. So it's like if people say, like, because people, this is what you hear, oh, this had an effect on this, or this was correlated to this, or even be about more, this caused this. Okay. This was a factor in this event. So A was a factor in B happening. Okay. People hear that A was a factor in B happening, and then in their own mind, they oversimplify it and they think like, oh, A was the sole cause of B. It's rarely like that. Okay. If you say A was a major factor in B or a cause in B, Do not come out of it and be like, oh, A caused B. It was the only necessary cause for B to happen. It usually doesn't work like that. Okay, so you could acknowledge the effect without oversimplifying it. Carissa is saying, isn't climate change too much hot air? They've been changing even before the early industrial age. We came out of the last mini ice age in 1760. I believe climate change is naturally. Well, Carissa, you would be against almost every scientist that has been studied the issue. Okay, so you could just like come up with conclusions based on your feelings and your gut reaction on what things are like, or you could go with the scientific consensus, which is telling you that yeah, climate change is actually a serious thing, and anywhere that is being suggested that it's not a serious thing, you can see political elements at play. Okay, so no, there are few things that could harm us in such drastic ways as climate change. So I think we're not taking it seriously enough, given the possible ways that this could affect us. Okay, so here's the thing: even even if something only has a 1% chance of having such dramatic changes on our life as climate change, 1% chance of some such dramatic things is so high. You don't understand how high that is. We're talking about changing the world of climate, okay, and the impact that has on people's lives could be very significant. So there are two ways that we could react to this. There's almost impossible for there to be a third one. Okay, we could overreact, we could underreact, and the third option of getting it just right is impossible. All right, because it's mathematically impossible. All right, given the number of external factors that will we have to take into account to get the exact proportional response that is needed. Getting that right, you have to have godlike predictive capabilities for you to be able to be like, oh, we just got it right. Okay, so between underreacting to something that could be so damaging and is so damaging to life on Earth, and overreacting, I choose overreacting. Okay, the consequences of the negative consequences of us overreacting to climate change is dramatically less than the consequences of us underreacting. Okay, so there's that. Yeah, there's also flooding going on in China, wildfires in Russia and Western America. All right, cool. I'm just going to quickly finish this. Really good questions today. Are you aware that wildfires in the U.S. destroyed more land 100 years ago than they did this year? See, like again, you could go find data point. Okay, I could tell you that anybody could find data points that makes it seem like their side is right. Unless you're a trained scientist in that specific field, looking at raw data is the best way for you to come up with wrong conclusions. Collecting data, it's its own science. Analyzing data while controlling for external factors, it's a whole other science. Okay, and random people on the internet will be able to find data points for you that could make almost any argument seem credible. That's why we rely on peer-reviewed academic research where people take all the external factors in mind and try to come up with a model that actually, as much as possible, eliminates all the factors that we are not considering and only focus on things that we're studying the causal relationship of, right? And this is why we appeal to credible authority, okay, when it comes to complicated data like this. You just been like, have you heard of this? Again, I could throw data points at you that would be like the other way around. Okay, you need to look at what the scientific community is saying. And am I saying the scientific community never gets anything right? Never gets anything wrong? No, I'm not. But it's Occam's razor. You apply Occam's razor. They're more likely to get it right than your conclusions based on random facts that you find. Okay, so appealing to the scientific community is not the shortest way. Well, it is the shortest way, but it's not the guaranteed way for you to come up with right conclusions, but it's the most likely one. Oh, Qasim is giving us an update about the protests in Khuzestan. He's saying not new thing, just protests are getting more crowded and women are joining them. Yes, I heard women joining in Khuzestan is actually against cultural norms in Khuzestan. Like that's you're more likely to see that happening in like Tehran, but not in Ahvaz. So that's very interesting. I heard that analysis. I don't know how much that's true, but that was very interesting. And people are saying that it could pick up even like it's going to more and more new cities. So we'll see how much farther it's going to go. I saw even it was like even people in Tehran were picking up some of the protests, and I saw some amazing videos. Yeah, we're going to keep an eye on this. Okay. Are you aware that? Well, yeah, I already highlighted this. Okay, I'm going to try to leave. All right, I'm only going to look at a few more questions. Music guy saying, with Lebanon not able to pay its soldiers or food or medicine for them, will they now not protect politicians and turn against them? Oh, now not protect, furthering more protest. What seems that it could happen, okay, I'm trying to be careful with my certainty here, is that Hezbollah being when it comes to the armed forces in Lebanon, you always have to, even before this, Hezbollah had the upper hand. Okay, so when it comes to defending Lebanon, the armed forces of the official government was seen as something of a joke compared to what Hezbollah is capable of. Okay, you could question the accuracy of that. But given how much access Hezbollah has to manpower and ammunition, it was always assumed that Hezbollah's influence in politics is felt by the amount of force they could, exert in if things don't go the way. Like that's always the elephant in the room, and people know that Hezbollah, at the end of the day, these are the people with the guns are the people who are in charge. And you could dance your political dance, but at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, right? What the current situation in Lebanon might make this gap and Hezbollah's authority become even more felt than before, like as if it wasn't like that already, right? So this could end up, again, I'm trying to be skeptical here, be a major win for Iran's influence in Lebanon, even though they already had a major influence, okay? Because you have to understand that the source of Hezbollah's funding is not from Lebanon itself, like the current armed forces in Lebanon, but the collapse of the currency and everything, like who's going to pay them? Well, the Hezbollah, they're getting paid from Tehran, right? So even if they're getting paid less because of Iran's situation, the thing is that they're getting the gap. It's not about how much they're getting paid. It's about the gap between how much Iran can pay them and how much everybody else has, economic power in Lebanon. So as long as that gap is big, even if it's less, Iran's government is still going to come out winning, right? So, I mean, the current politicians, Hezbollah could offer them security for a price, right? I mean, I don't know if it has gone that far that people turn on their own politicians, but Hezbollah is Hezbollah is like, hey, if you need law and order, you can call me. And like, is the whole country's collapsing? Well, I have food. Like, yeah, they actually took pictures of foods and stuff and be like, we're not gonna distribute this unless you guys agree to this, and that. Like, look, the things that you want, we have. Like, you want food, you want security, we have them, but we're gonna give it to you once you agree to this and this and that. So this is like, yeah, it's horrible. Lebanon was such a it was easy for people to be very optimistic about Lebanon if you just looked at it like, I don't know, a couple of years ago. It was like, the pearl of the Middle East. People lived happy lives. It was now look at it. Like, it was so hard to predict it getting to this devastating situation. It's such a tragedy. Do you think CRT is necessary in some US states, or it's not at all needed? And CRT is like, critical race theory is just a way for you to study certain societal changes, as long as it's used as a lens to look at things. It's fine. Like, it's not a CRT shouldn't be used as a way to. CRT is not like a. It's not like here's how you run society. That's not. If it's being used like that, then that's horrible, right? I mean, because it's just one lens among many lenses that you could use to analyze what's happening. If anybody wants to, the problem comes from people who think that's the way of looking at trends, and any conclusions from it is the right conclusion. That's where people take it, and that could be sources of really bad conclusions, right? However, just like it's a race reductionist way of looking at things, and that by itself doesn't mean that is by nature bad. By its own nature, it means that if you try to analyze societal changes with a race reductionist way, just understand the limitations of the conclusions that you could come up with based on looking at that, and just acknowledge that you're just doing that just so that you can see what if you notice something interesting or an interesting trend by looking at it this way. But then also compare that to other ways, other lenses of looking at society, right? So basically, the way you should look at CRT is like, hey, I'm just going to put this lens on. It's going to blind me to many other things, and I'm going to see what I'm looking at, okay? And like, okay, well, that's interesting. And then put it aside, and then you put another lens on, like, oh, and now I'm seeing something else I didn't see before, okay? That's how you treat these different methods of studying society, okay? But if you just put that lens on and you're like, I'm refusing to take this off, and every conclusion that I get is now the de facto conclusion, and everybody else that is like looking at it in a different way. No, that's not how it's supposed to be used, because if you use it like that, is specifically a methodology that is race reductionist, and it's going to blind you to so many other things that you're not going to notice. That's what makes it dangerous, okay? So it's supposed to be a tool for us to maybe notice some things that we wouldn't have otherwise. In that case, it's fine. But if you're limited to that, then you are going to blind to so many things that other people are going to be able to see, and you're going to come up with suggestions and conclusions that are going to be unhelpful if you're only using that lens. Okay, Ghostbunny. Okay, I'm going to have to end this soon. It was okay. Well, here's a question: do you have a license to bear arms? Oh, okay, I'm too busy with homework to come up with a serious question. Okay. I don't need one. How about that? All right, I'm just gonna answer one more question by Mir Jalal. Let me see if there's any. I'm gonna answer one question by Mir Jalal, and then by members, and then I'm gonna go. Ben & Jerry ice cream has stopped selling ice cream in Palestinian occupied territories. Your opinions? That's on my list of things to review. I haven't got to that yet, so I don't know the nature of it. But I just wonder, because when I was in so I'm not going to comment on this specific issue because I haven't reviewed the specifics of it yet. It's on my list. It's on my list for content to consume today. However, the nature of economics. See, I'm very much in favor of protests in the form of, I don't know, in peaceful ways, right? Which this is one of them, right? Whether I'm for, however, let me actually clarify this. Okay, so even if it's protesting against something that I like, for example, the nature of protests, if it's peaceful, to me is like a culture of rebellion, a culture of protest, a culture of bringing attention to things. Even if it's rebelling against something that I like, I still celebrate that, because people being motivated to get their voice heard in ways that are not violent is always a good thing. Okay. However, a lot of times when people are trying to hurt the people that are causing harm, they don't actually look into who are they hurting. Because when it comes to Palestine, a lot of times, these efforts hurt Palestinians, right? A lot of times people not buying certain products, or it hurts Palestinians and Arab Israelis, that their economies and their livelihood is tied into it, right? So again, I haven't looked into this, but taking business out of Palestinian places is going to hurt if that becomes, I mean, this has just been and Jerry, so I don't know if it's going to be that big of a, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But doing that more and more, like the way that Palestinian people, unfortunately, the way if Palestinian people are going to be heard more is if they have economic power. Okay, people's voices are more heard when they're richer. That's just the nature of things. So bringing more business to Palestinian areas, and I don't know if people understand that Palestinian people work a lot of times with Israelis. Okay, a lot of people in Palestine, their income depends on their work that they do with their Israelis, right? So the more and more economy gets dependent on Palestinians, the more their voices are going to be valued internationally and for Israelis, because Israeli people's business is going to depend on the work and services that the Palestinian people are bringing them as well. Again, I'm not encouraging the fact that people's voices are, I'm not saying this is a good thing that people's voices are heard when they're richer. I'm just saying that's the nature of things. One way to fight for Palestinian cause is to bring more business to Palestine, to Palestinian territories, to these areas. Okay, again, this specific situation might be different because you might be watching this clip later, but this just came out like yesterday. So again, among all the things that I'm reviewing, this is one of them. So if you're watching this like 1 week from now, like how come you have not heard of this? Is because the stream was like a week ago or sometime. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go. I don't know if that will answer. What do you guys think of that answer? I'm open to criticism. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go. Thank you guys. Secular Writing, great stream. Thank you. Armin, do you still think Enlightenment values are under attack? Yes, of course, always. But I'm gonna go. So thank you guys. Thank you for spending time with me. I really have fun doing these streams. So questions are great today. The questions were really, really good. I enjoy your questions. Yeah, this was a fun stream. Thank you. I'm just here for compliments now. That's why I'm staying. Okay. All right. I'm going to end the stream. Bye.